All right, what's going on? Welcome to Insight with Irv. In this episode, we are going to be breaking down something that's been tugging on me for some time. I know for a fact I've personally dealt with it. I think that a lot of us deal with it, and I think that it's just one of those things that needs to be called out. I'm referring to being money ignorant. Now, full disclosure, before I get into this podcast, this isn't a podcast to talk about happiness. This isn't a podcast to talk about dealing with stress. This isn't even though it's part of it, this isn't a podcast to talk about, your purpose in life, like, what makes you feel good, your feel good project, your passion project. The whole purpose of this podcast today is to talk about money. It is to talk about financial success. And so I know that in life, there are way more things that are just as, if not more important than money, like having a healthy marriage, having healthy kids, having all of your limbs, right? But again, for the purpose of this, because it is pretty requested, I do want to talk about the importance of money and why being money ignorant is holding you back from living a better life and being more of an impact to your community if you're thinking maybe a bit more from a philanthropist standpoint. So the first thing that I want to break down is that you need to stop spending money where you're not seeing a return. I think that a lot of us deal with this, where we start to spend money where it makes us feel good. And sometimes where we spend our money where we feel good isn't necessarily where we're going to see the biggest return. Here's what I mean. I remember going out, and you guys know that we talk a lot about fitness and things like that, right? Because I like to eat, but I also like to lift. And so it's like it's a dichotomy, right? It's a dichotomy that needs to be managed. But the reason why I say that is because I would go out to these networking events, and like around 1 p.m., 2 p.m., we'd have these sit-ins, these meetings, and I would kind of just order, maybe steak and some fries or just something that's a bit more carb heavy. And even though at the time I'm like, okay, we're doing some business, I feel good. What would end up happening is after the meeting, when I would have to go back in to kind of like crunch time, whether it was to make more phone calls, or if it was to potentially go out and talk to more ideal clients, prospects, I found myself feeling a little bit just like, man, I feel like I want to take a nap, or I feel just a little heavier than what I would like. It would always point back to maybe the meal that I selected wasn't one that I maybe should have had, at least at that time, if I was in production mode, right? But it's not just about food. A lot of us, especially millennials, we love to travel. I think millennials is that generation that if it were to us versus buying a house or investing in the stock market, let's be honest here. We're probably going to travel. We're going to pick a state. We're going to throw a pin into a bullseye. We're going to say, this is my next destination right here. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with traveling, especially if you want to have experiences. But remember, the whole point of this podcast right here, I don't want you to feel comfortable. It is to kind of challenge you with how you view money. And so the reason why I bring up travel is because maybe you're not seeing a return on the traveling that you're doing. Now, I'm not talking about traveling where you're going out there and you're meeting people. I'm talking about the traveling where you're just trying to escape and run from something, but you know that you have to come back home once you have to check out from the hotel. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so the two scenarios that I just painted for you is typically money that we put into something that makes us feel good, even though we're not going to see a return from it because we're trying to mask undealt trauma or undealt with issues that maybe we don't want to face just yet. But here's the thing, if you don't face it, it's going to continue to come up at every level. Whether it is something as easy as saying no to, hey, let's go out for a couple drinks this weekend. Hey, no, man, I can't go out for drinks this weekend, dude. I gotta, I gotta wake up early tomorrow. I gotta make a couple of cold calls. I gotta go out. I gotta meet with some clients. I'm gonna end up networking, and so I want to be on my A game. The second thing that you want to pay attention to is that you want to give your money a job versus it being the other way around. Now, I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna tell you, hey, being a job is you're a slave, right? I know that there's a lot of content out there like that, especially with entrepreneurship. I'm not that kind of guy. I think that even if you have a job, you can be the millionaire next door. You just have to be diligent with your money. So I want to speak to two types of people. I want to speak to those of us who have jobs that are looking to break out of kind of like the financial rut or out of the rat race, and then I also want to speak to those of us who are business owners. So the first group of us, look, if you have a job, you want to give your money a job. What that means is rather than going out, spending recklessly, not knowing what your credit score is, not knowing how much money is in your account. Like if I were to ask you right now, how much money is in your account, pop quiz, would you be able to tell me? If you can't tell me how much money is in your accounts, either A, you have a lot of it, or B, you're not really tracking your finances as tightly as you should. I remember when I was really starting to build out and I wanted to get more disciplined during when I was fixing my credit and when I was starting to kind of like build out my business, is I knew how much money was in my account at any given moment. Like it wasn't much, but I could tell you to the T, hey, here's how much it was. Here was my last 2 transactions. Like I knew what was coming in and I knew what was coming out. And I think that you kind of have to be like that, especially when you are strapped for cash, right? You have to just become aware of where your money's going, because if not, money's going to find the leak. If you're not mastering money, money's going to master you. And so one of the ways that you can master money is by giving it an assignment. Hey, this month we're allocating X amount of dollars over to marketing because we want to start growing our social media brand. Hey, next month we want to maybe start chipping down some of the debt so that we can start leveraging maybe more credit for certain projects that we're going to be bringing on. Hey, later on this month, I want to invest $500 into the S&P 500, which is going to give me an 8 to 12% year over year return, versus going out for a couple of drinks and going out to restaurants and just spending money recklessly. Now, the other portion of us who are business owners, you have to start seeing money as a tool. I know that for both of us, those that have jobs and those that don't, or those that have businesses, both are tools, but especially if you are an entrepreneur, because that money that you have is what's going to buy you your time back. You're going to be able to hire people who are way better at a job than you are. Look, when you're hiring someone, whether it's a videographer, if you're hiring someone to manage your sales floor, if you're hiring someone to maybe help you with organizing your organization, right? So you're an operator, you want them to be better than you. You need to put to the side this whole thing about I do my job the best over everyone, because it's going to keep you stuck where you are. One of the fastest ways that you can do that is by learning the skill set first, which I totally agree with. Learn at least the baseline of what that job needs to look like so that you know what a good hire and what a bad hire looks like, and then go out and find a hire that's far better than you. And if you're wondering how do you do that, well, you're doing that through the finances that you're saving up for. You're buying courses, you're investing into seminars, you are going out and you're networking with other people. You're maybe paying someone for their time for a sit down so that they can tell you, hey, this is how I ran it. This is how I recommend you do it. And in my opinion, the cheapest route, apart from YouTube, which is practically free, the only thing that's going to cost you is your time. Go out and get books. Like, you can speed up your process so much faster by reading someone who's done it. And so the best thing about books and even podcasts like this is they're compiling what took them 10 years to learn into a 10-minute clip, into a 1-hour clip. And then lastly, and before we get into it, I want to thank you guys for tuning in with me. Look, we don't run any ads, any sponsors on our podcast. And so pretty much the way that we've been growing is by word of mouth. And so the only thing that we ask is, if you've been finding value in this content, 2 things. 1, leave a 5-star review, because again, it would help the algorithm gods push us to a larger audience. And then secondly, share it with someone that you know is going to be able to find value in it as well. It's the only thing that I ask for. Like, I'm not trying to sell you anything on here. I'm just trying to help out as many people as I can with this podcast. And the third thing that you want to watch out for with money ignorance is, again, you want to watch how money flows, and you want to watch it closely. We kind of touched on it earlier, but I kind of close it out with this. If you had a coffee shop that you wanted to open up and run, and you were watching someone else's coffee shop, a successful coffee shop, whether you like the business owner or not, and they were doing far better than you. In fact, I challenge you that if you don't like someone and they're beating your butt in business and they're making more money than you, again, I'm not talking about happiness. I'm not talking about a better marriage. I'm not talking about happier kids, healthier kids. I'm not talking about being a good parent. The whole purpose of this episode was somebody who's making more money than you. I would challenge you to learn from someone who you don't necessarily see eye to eye with, because it would bring you outside of your comfort zone in terms of, hey, they're obviously doing something that I haven't been able to tap into just yet. And so with that coffee shop example, you can insert your business into this, right? Hey, how are they serving their cups of coffee? Are they serving it with red cups? Are they black cups? Are they white cups? Or what's the demographic? Are those young men going into a coffee shop? Are they young women? Are they middle-aged men, middle-aged women? What's the demographic? Are they white? Are they Latino? Are they black? How are the chairs positioned? Do they have 2 servers? Do they have people literally coming out from behind the counter, giving the person the coffee, or do people have to go up to the barista and ask for the order? And then from there, you can start to kind of reverse engineer well, this is what's working for them. I think that I can take a piece of that and make it work for me. Or, you know what, maybe this is something that I need to improve on, or maybe this is something that I can do better than what they're doing. I promise you, once you start learning how money flows and you start to learn the language of money, which is financial literacy, right? You'll stop being less money ignorant and it'll start happening gradually. Now, don't expect for it to happen overnight. You're not going to know everything about taxes overnight. You're not going to know everything about LLCs overnight. You're not going to know everything about credit overnight. But these are conversations that you should start integrating with your friends. Start challenging them. Hey, I saw a video on YouTube the other day. This guy was talking about 4 ways to make more money with these 2 side hustles I thought were really cool. Have you heard of this before? Open up the conversation with that. If you start to see that maybe some of the people that you're hanging around, they just don't want it, you may want to start hanging around a different group. And I'm not saying that you're going to stop being friends with them, but I'm saying for the purposes of people who are making more money and growing their businesses, you may want to get around them to at least start exploring and tasting that area in your life. So I hope that you found value in this episode. Again, I know that we talk about mindset, we talk about happiness, we talk about joy, we talk about having a healthier marriage, but I wanted to challenge you with this episode and I wanted to kind of push the boundaries and really help you focus on something that's important, which is how you manage your money and how you steward it. So that's the whole focus and the whole focal point of this episode. Again, if you found value in it, it would mean a lot to us if you share it with someone that you know would find this helpful as well. Other than that, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. We'll see you on the other side.